In this video, I'm gonna walk you through the entire experience of capturing this, one of my favorite engagement photos of all time. I'm gonna walk you through how it was lit, how it was photographed, and what it was like taking this picture inside of a 30-mile-per-hour sandstorm. My name is Pi, and I'm one of the founders of Lynn and Jersa Photography and SLRLounge.com. We're teaming up with Adorama to bring you a new series of photography tutorials called Master Your Craft right here on Adorama TV. So let's dive in. What's up, friends? My name is Pi. Welcome to Adorama TV. Welcome to my humble abode. You know how I like to do. I like to get straight into things. I'm going to start by just describing the situation that kind of led to this shoot. So I have this amazing couple. They commissioned me to go and do this crazy shoot. In fact, the couple, they're actually amateur photographers. They're SLR Lounge Premium members, but that's just their hobby. They're both facial reconstruction surgeons, and it's kind of their dream to come out to the West Coast and work with me for a day and go create engagement portraits and / kind of wedding portraits. But anyway, I gotta say, just side note, how incredibly honored that is to hear that and to be able to do this for a living. I had to kind of pinch myself. So we're planning for the shoot, and I proposed this idea. Why don't we head down to Glamis? This is where the Imperial Sand Dunes are, and we can just spend a day creating incredible images and just have fun. Now, mind you, Glamis, the Imperial Sand Dunes, they're about 4 hours one way from where our studio is in Orange County. So it's a bit of a drive to get there. You know, we're going to shoot for a few hours, and then we're going to come back. We're talking a full 12 to 14 hour day to do this shoot. They're completely down and we're off, okay? We get there, everything is going incredibly smoothly. I mean, we got the perfect weather. You usually can only shoot in Glamis at certain times of the year, fall to winter kind of being one of those. So during this wintertime shoot, it's beautiful, perfect weather. It's just right on. Meanwhile, in LA and Orange County, it's actually raining cats and dogs, but for us, it was beautiful and sunny. About 30 minutes into the shoot, and one quick note, these clients were cool enough to allow me to use this image and the B-roll for this for educational purposes because they are themselves premium members, but they did want to remain private. So I'm not going to mention names and we're not going to show any B-roll that shows faces, but we did want to thank them for allowing us to show you guys what this shoot was like. 30 minutes into this, everything is going incredibly smoothly and we're getting crazy shots. And then the wind starts to pick up a bit. Now, no big deal. I'm still working on all my zoom lenses. I've got the 15 to 35, I've got my 28 to 70, and I've got my 70-200 in my bag. And we're still just kind of working and shooting. But then the wind kind of picks up a bit more. And within another few minutes, the sand is like stinging our faces. And so I put my kind of camera into the bag and put the lenses and make sure everything's covered up. But at this point, I was already shooting for a few minutes. And I started to notice sand getting into the moving parts of the lenses. So I was like, okay, we're done with the zooms. This brings me to my first set of tips in just a couple minutes, which is what do you do with your gear in these extreme environments and how do you protect it? We look at the weather report and on my phone, it literally says sunny skies, no wind. And I'm like, that's funny because it feels a little bit different as the sand is like gently exfoliating every piece of everything on our skin. Everybody starts to shelter, starts to hide. Everybody that's there for recreation, on their buggies, everything. Everyone's hiding in their campers, and we go into the car and we start thinking about what we're going to do. Well, this brings me to a few different tips when it comes to shooting in this kind of environment. Number one, don't. If you want to protect your gear and you don't want to deal with any expenses, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment, then don't shoot in the environment. But like I said, we had planned this. This is a commission shoot. We're there, and this is a 14-hour production day. We're committed. On top of that, I also know that it's these insane weather conditions, which I've never seen this in Glamis, and I've shot there multiple times. But these insane weather conditions are something that I love. Yeah, I know it's probably going to cost me some money with the gear, but I also know I'm going to get some incredible images that nobody else is going to get because most people don't want to shoot in that kind of environment, understandably. But I do have a couple tips if you are going to shoot in that environment. So number one, always carry with you a rain shield. These are those little bags that you kind of put over your camera gear and you use them for rainy conditions. Did I have one? No. This was a lesson that I learned on this particular day. Even when it's sunny, carry a rain shield. And this would actually make sense now that I'm 10 years into this, and this is the first sandstorm that I was caught in, but I was like, yeah, if you're at the beach or if you're in the desert and you're caught in a sandstorm, that rain shield would actually work pretty nicely around the lens and everything to protect it from sand. I didn't have this, which brings me to tip number 2. Whenever you're in this kind of a condition, and really even if I have a rain shield, I probably am still going to switch off of my zoom lenses and switch over to prime lenses. So this is the point where I don't have that shield, and only a few minutes of shooting, I already noticed that I'm getting sand in the gear of the lenses, right? Because the moving parts of these zoom lenses, they can't keep out like little tiny fine particles of sand. So I feel it. I feel it start to click a little bit. I know immediately, stop. And if you get in that situation, you've got a little bit of sand in those gears, don't keep using those lenses, because having sand in the lens is not a huge issue so long as you get it cleaned and fixed. And that cleaning bill is going to be expensive. As I'm going to show you in a moment, it's going to be about, $200 to $300 per lens. But if you continue to use it and zoom in and out and move the components, then you're talking damaging the actual gears and mechanism inside the lens, which turns it into a $1,200 to $1,500 replacement to get all the parts and everything per lens. You might end up having to pay more than the lens is actually worth. So this is where I put the lenses away and I switch over to primes. And from here on out, basically anytime we're going to do a lens swap, which is tip number 3, you're going to do it in cover, ideally inside of your car, inside of a place where there's nothing blowing, and make sure the camera is off when you do a lens swap. Okay, so those are some basic tips. Even without a rain shield, I can continue to use my primes, and I'm not too worried about these. There's not really that many moving parts. I'm not using the focus rings or anything like that, so I can shoot and then clean them later and everything will be good. And it turned out to be this way. But the 15 minutes that I was using my zooms, maybe it was 30 minutes while it was sandy, was enough to be a $1,200 repair bill. Well, close to $1,200. We're probably showing you the B-roll right now. Was it still worth doing the shoot? Abso-freaking-lutely. I knew it would be, because I'm never going to be in this situation again. And I'm like, you know what? I'll brave the repair bill just to get these photographs. Granted, I wouldn't have needed to had I swapped to the primes a bit earlier. But, the more you know. Okay, so gear tips being done, we get to what is it like working in a high-pressure environment. We had what was going to be just a casual and fun engagement and wedding kind of styled shoot, and it turned into essentially this high pressure environment where we really can't even be outside for long because the wind is literally bringing the sand up and stinging our faces. We can't keep our eyes open. We can't talk. We can't communicate. So once we're in the car, I actually go over to the couple and I say, bad news, the weather report did just update, and yeah, it's windy. As if we didn't know. But I said, if you're down to keep shooting, so am I. And the good news is that I know we're going to get incredible photographs if you're good with it. What we'll do though is we'll shoot in intervals. I've done this many, many times. I've done this in extreme cold weather. I do this in rain weather. I did this up in Banff. We did an engagement session up there where it was negative 35 degrees or somewhere around that. It was an insane number. It was in the negatives, okay? It was at the place where Celsius and Fahrenheit are just like, nobody gives a crap anymore. They're about the same number. That's how cold it was. And we did the same thing where we would do intervals. So sit in the car, you warm up. In this case, we're sitting in the car. We're kind of just, chilling, just like, are we ready for this? Cleaning the sand out of our eyes, getting put back together. Then you hop out and you shoot. So going in these 5-minute intervals and now realizing that your time is dramatically limited, it's kind of like a wedding day, right? It's like the high pressure environment of just being on a timeline and being in crunch mode. So when you're in that situation, I'm going to say this first. You're probably not going to be trying things out so much as you are leaning on techniques and things that you've already mastered. In any high pressure environment, I would suggest that you do this. Lean on all the techniques that you've mastered. And this is where it becomes so important to have practiced all these techniques, from lighting to shooting to posing to everything, because in these moments, you really don't have time to experiment. You have to go to the things that you know, the things that you're confident with. Next, you're going to not forget to use your frameworks. This is why I create frameworks like Camp. So when it came to sunset, I see this little vista with these rolling hills, and I'm like, that's incredible. And what I did was I actually left them in the car and I ran out to scout it myself just to see, like, would this be a good spot? And immediately when I see it, I go, this is the spot where we're going to get this last photograph. This is kind of the end of the day shot. And what I saw in this scene was this beautiful color in the sky, a rolling hill, which you'll notice I'm going to place my light kind of right in front of. And then this curvature of the dunes in front of me that looks almost like wings, like of an angel, okay? Like it kind of dips in where they're going to stand. Okay, knowing this, I take this photograph. This was the first shot, and yeah, if you're expecting these first ones to be good, no, let me just brighten this up. But there's that darker dune that I'm looking at, right? And there's the spot where I want them to stand right in front of this. So we grab the B10. This is my ProPhoto B10. It's roughly 250 watt seconds. The B10 Plus is 500 watt seconds. I think we're opting for the B10 Plus, although you don't need all that power. Anything that's around that 200 watt second range is going to be totally fine. I was opting for the B10 Plus because there was no way I was going to run back and grab a different light. So I'm like, just get something that's powerful. Let's get out there and be good to go. I have my lighting assistant who, again, our team is incredible, and he's down. Our whole team is down. Viet on behind the scenes is down. We're just shooting and having a good time. So I have Josh run the light back and place it right in front of that hill. So if I brighten this up enough, you can see that the hill is still right behind the flash. Why am I placing it right there? Because I know that if the couple is in front of it, that the dark hill is going to make them pop out, and right above them is all this sky. So the dark hill becomes this darker background that I can use to make that rim light, that backlight really pop. Now we get to testing. I've got Viet out there and I'm like, dude, you need to be the one to go and stand in. So I'm not going to, I'm not going to go and get the couple or do any of that stuff. But let's get to, at least not until everything is ready to go. Let's get to the next piece of this, which is now that we know the composition, we're talking ambient light, right? So if you look at this baseline exposure, this is where I started. 1/250th f1.4 and ISO 50. And normally I would say, do your ambient light first and then start dialing in your flash. So you go ambient light, then modify, add the flash, modify the light power, right? I'm kind of combining these two steps because of the situation. So he's placed, I'm starting to figure out, okay, where do I want my ambient light to be? And I start to bring up the ambient light. When I bring the couple in, I actually land at 1/200 of a second, f1.4 and ISO 800. And the reason for this is that it's getting darker and darker by the minute. So to get the sky to a place where you'll notice that so this is fully reset out, okay? You'll notice that in the histogram, the sky's not blown. And I want the sky to be as bright as possible without blowing out anything because I want as much detail as possible without essentially overexposing any parts of the image because I want it to be a dramatic shot. What I'm trying to do is make sure that my shadows are bright enough. See, down here, if I were to leave the exposure down at ISO 100, the shadows are so dark that when I attempt to recover, the camera does okay, but they are going to get a bit more muddy. So instead, I'm going to the brightest possible exposure, which is, this is ISO 100. So we landed at 800, right? So 200, 400, 800, that's about 3 stops up. And you notice that if I bring my exposure 3 stops up just on that raw file, that you can now see the shadows pretty clearly. So from there, it becomes pretty simple. All I got to do now is dial the flash down, and you're going to land depending on where the flash is placed. So notice I place the flash kind of like 20 to 30 feet behind the couple, and it's down the hill, and that's what's creating this sort of wing-like effect as it goes up on each side. So depending on where the flash is, you're going to want it around maybe 1/2, 1/4, 1/8 power. Again, depending on your ISO. Here we're around probably 1/4 power on a B10 Plus is roughly 100 to 200 watt seconds. Okay, so any high power flash at about half power is going to be fine. If it's a small flash, you're going to go full power. I have a CTO gel on this because I do want a warmer look to the light. And that's why you see, even if I cool this down, the light color is still fairly warm on the image. This is the place. So Viet is actually standing in right now and he still wants this photograph. So Viet, I will edit this photograph and send it to you, okay? But he was like, but dude, can I get that shot that you did of me there? Yeah, of course, dude. So this is where I wave the couple out. They come out and now we're really on the clock because up until that moment, it was just us being uncomfortable and being punished by the sand. Now, once they're out of the car, this is kind of where I'm going to work in 5 to 10 minute intervals and get them back inside and resting. And this being our last shot, we're going to just finish up here. But we get them placed right in front of it. And I have her directly in front of the flash. And I did this shot first. So basically, when we talk about the camp framework, we've done the composition, we've done our ambient light, we've done the modifying and adding our light source. Now you get to pose and photograph, right? This is the last piece. I would always say start with the pose that's safe. So especially when you're in a high pressure environment like this one, right? So we start with something safe. I have them hold hands, I have them look at each other, and I get a few shots. I'm making sure that everything is good, that I love the overall look, but B, I need to get something that works, okay? I know what I want to do. I want them to go into a lift, but I need to get something that works, because if the lift doesn't work, if the shot doesn't come out, then I can't not have anything. So I'm always going to start with that. And I did a couple of vertical shots. I decided, the horizontal composition showing this just expanding across this entire, it looks fantastic. And you'll see in every one of these images, as the flash fires, it lights up the sand that's coming off the ground, and it looks incredible. Okay, so I've got a safety shot in here. I've already got this. I know I'm good. Look at the way that they're popping against that darker background, right? Had they been placed up higher against the sky, you're not going to get the same backlighting and that same rim light effect on them. Cool. So now that I have this, I have them go for the next pose, which is a lift. I know that they want to do a lift, this kind of dramatic shot. But here's the thing is, in that type of environment, I'm always going to coach the clients and pose them before they walk out. See, at this distance, they can't really hear me. I have to scream. And at this point, my voice is already gone. It's difficult. So I'm always going to instruct them and say, the first thing we're going to do is this one. Then we're going to go. And when I scream out, you're going to go and do the lift. This is what I want you guys to do. We practice it. Then they walk out. So that way we're not trying to communicate and do this over this long distance while our faces are being punished. Now, when that flash fires, we end up with this shot. Well, technically it's this shot. So I'm going to show you the reset out shot. So it looks like this coming straight out of the camera, and with the right exposure, I have all the latitude and everything. See, I can pull the highlights down a bit. I can bring the whites down a bit. I can bring the shadows up. I can bring the blacks up, and I can kind of create this beautiful balance between them. And with a little bit of color. So I used Visual Flow Presets Modern Pack for this one, and I lifted a little bit of tones, and we get to this final image. And I freaking love this photograph. I mean, when you look at this photograph, when another photographer looks at the photograph, maybe they see something that's, technically impressive, or maybe they see something that's really cool, right? In terms of just the effect of the sand being lit up. Maybe it's just a dramatic shot. And I get that for a lot of people. The shot's cool, but maybe it's not award winning, or maybe it's not this crazy thing to them. But for me, this shot represented a whole bunch more. And I have this other video talking about the psychology of a photograph. And if that's already published, I'd highly recommend you guys to check it out. If it's not yet, then be on the lookout for it, because I talk a lot about it, what the purpose of a photograph is, and what a photograph is, this emotional anchor point. And when I look at this image, it takes me back to this entire day, to arriving, to being stuck with this monumental challenge, to have a couple that was down and willing to do anything, and to go out and to use the things that I've learned to this point in my career, and to create exceptional images for my client, regardless of the environment that I'm in. And I'm just having a blast. And when I look back at this photo, it has that entire sense of adventure to me. So beyond just creating what I think is a really cool photograph, it's a photograph that has a lot of meaning and purpose to my own career this far as a photographer. But that's it. So this is how I lit, how I photographed one of my favorite engagement photos of all time for one of my favorite clients of all time. The next day, first thing in the morning, I take my zoom lenses and my camera body over to Canon to get them repaired. And yeah, I was kind of expecting a couple $100 to open and clean these lenses. No, the sand, within 15-20 minutes, the sand had gotten deep enough in them that they had to be fully taken apart and cleaned. Fortunately, there was no damage because I wasn't using the lenses after I noticed they got sandy, but it did cost a little bit more than $1,100. Still, looking back at all the images that we created, it was an incredible experience, and I would have done it any differently other than just now I'm going to carry a rain bag even when the weather report says it's sunny and 80 degrees. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope you guys walked away with a bunch of tips and tricks on every part of this shoot, from lighting to the experience itself to how do you work in these kind of environments and all of it. If you enjoyed, I'd love for you to leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. I do read your comments. I get ideas for future videos. So if you have questions, let me know. I don't always get a chance to reply to everybody. It's kind of difficult, but I do read them all and I appreciate them all. In the meantime, I'd love for y'all to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to Adorama TV, because I want to see you guys back here same time next week. And if you'd like to follow me, you can find me at PieJersa on Instagram. That is my personal account, so expect me to get a bit personal. That's it for me, guys. Have a good one. Peace.